So from this view, I can go into any of these assignments and I can go directly into the grading status. Say I've got 6 students here that need to be graded or 6 assignments. I can click on that and that'll take me directly into the 6 submissions that I need to grade. It will automatically filter out all the things that have already been graded, so I don't have to worry about that. If I do happen to want to see everybody, all I do is change the status here to all graded statuses, and then that will bring everybody's back in. But I find it helpful to say, how many of these do I need to grade? Those are the ones I need to focus on, right? So I only want to see the ones I need to grade. So I can filter this view by the needs grading status. Also, if you've got a large class, you've got 50 plus people in there and you're looking for a specific student, you can type in their name there and that will filter your list down to just that particular student that you're looking for. So again, if a student comes to your office and says, hey, I want to go over exam 1 with you, and you've got 50, 75 people in your class, you can type in that student's name and go directly to that assignment and walk them through that. Again, remember, we talked about anytime you see a list of students, that the option to send them a message is always going to be there. So I can either choose to send a message to all 6 of these students and say, hey, I'm working on grading your papers. I'm so sorry. I was sick or whatever, or whatever you want to say to them. You can send those messages directly from this screen without needing to copy and paste their email addresses or their names and go to a different screen. You can interact with that and send those messages directly from this screen, which is great because if you come into something that says, if you look at students who haven't submitted, so no submissions, if there were students here, think about an easy way to say if there's 10 students on here that haven't submitted this and the due date was yesterday, I can send a message out to all 10 of those students at one time. It will send a blind carbon copy message so they won't see everybody else that missed the assignment as well. And you can send that message directly from this screen. Saves you a ton of time from copying that person's name into your email, sending that email, then copy and pasting that out 10 different times to 10 different students. You can do that directly from this screen here. Okay. So the other view, the next view that you have of the gradebook is by student. So if you come into the student view, this will list all of your students and give you their overall grade, their last access to their class, their student username and ID numbers. So what's great about this view is, say that Jenny comes and I want to look at just Jenny. I can come in and now I can see all of just her grades. So this is like her grader report. So if she comes to my class and wants to go over her final grade or her midterm grade, I go into the gradebook, pull her up, and now when I can share my screen with her and say, here are all your grades, and I don't have to worry about her seeing Johnny's grades or Jimmy's grades or whoever else, for FERPA reasons, but I can just go over with her all of her things so we can see that Jenny hasn't submitted anything. So no wonder she's struggling in your class. And so you can have that conversation with the student. You also can send her a message from here directly. And say, hey, Jenny, I see you're falling behind in the class. You might want to, let me know if you need some help. The other thing you can look at is her progress on this. And this goes to the question I think the lady had earlier. Can you see the individual? So when you go into the student view and module 1, you can see that she hasn't started anything in that module. She hasn't opened and each of the individual things in there, and you can see if she's opened them or not. So you can see her individual progress in the class without needing to look at the entire class all at once. Also, you can add a notes section. These are internal notes for you. The only people that see these notes are anybody that's listed as an instructor in this class. So if you want to put in a note that says, hey, Johnny called and said that his grandmother died and he'll be out for the next 3 days. So you don't have to remember that in your head or write it down on a Scrabble piece of notebook. You can put that note in here to remind yourself later that the student contacted you or came by your office, or maybe you want to put a note that, hey, Johnny came by my office today and is worried about blah, 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 just to make yourself a note that next time you see Johnny, hey, ask Johnny about, whatever it is. So these notes are internal, are confidential to you, and only people that see these are instructors in your class. So they don't get shared with the student, they don't get shared with anybody else. It's just for this class, okay? You also can see accommodations here. So, so with Jenny, she has a due date accommodation and she also has a time limit accommodation. So anything that comes from your student support areas, whoever gives you your student accommodations, and original Blackboard used to have to put these on each of the assignments. Now in Ultra, you can put it at the student level and that flows to every assignment that's given to that student all at once. So it saves you a ton of time and also make sure that you don't forget to give a student an accommodation. So for this one, the due date accommodation means that anytime that there's a due date on something, Jenny will not be held to that same standard, and her things will not be marked as late if she submits them after the class due date because she has an accommodation for that. Also with the time limit accommodation, so say if you've got a time limit exam and you give the students 60 minutes to complete their exam, you can either do one of two things. You can say that Jenny has unlimited time, so that timer doesn't apply to Jenny. Jenny won't even see the timer. Or you can give her a custom percentage. So if she gets 50% extra time, that means now on a 60-minute exam, she will have 90 minutes on her exam. And that will happen automatically once you set it at the student level. You set it one time for the class, and then you can just keep rolling. So you don't have to remember to do it every time there's a test. You don't remember, okay, these 5 students had accommodations, and go put those accommodations in. You do it one time at the student level, and that will take care of it for the rest of the class. So anytime you see Jenny's name, she'll have this nice little purple flag beside her name, and that's to let you know as an instructor that there is an accommodation granted for that student. If you come back to the student list, you can see all of the little purple flags here for people who have accommodation request for your class. Okay. Also in this list, you can obviously sort them by alphabetical order. You can sort them by username. You can sort them by last date of access, by overall grades, those kinds of things. Again, you can see their accommodation request or the message of students from here, or you can select, go into the student and choose to message them from this screen, whichever. Also, in the student activity report on this, you can see how many times the student has logged in. You can see the average number of hours in the class. And you can also see how many activity hours this particular student has put in versus the average of the class. So the first column is the average in the class. This tells you the range of the hours, and then the last column will tell you how many this student spent in your class for that particular day. You can see if they're above average, below average. You also can download this report too, and use this as a part of a student success plan or whatever you want to do. So you can download that. Also has the visual representation that we talked about earlier. Comes back to this screen and will show you their grade, how much time they spent in the class, those kinds of things. This can also be downloaded and exported and shared to whoever your academic advisor or maybe for the student if they ask. So for the gradebook, again, so those are the 2 views that are new. So the third view is the grid view. Now, this is probably what's going to look most familiar to you, and probably you're going to want to default to this view when you're getting started. I would challenge you to try to use the other 2 views first. In my opinion, they are better and give you more useful data. This may look comfortable and easy for you, but I think that the other views, the other list views, give you some more options and just make you rethink about how you're doing it. But if you want to, and you can still use this, and it's perfectly valid, but you can still use the kind of the traditional grid view. I prefer the other 2, but you make your own thing. Like I said, probably halfway through your first semester, you'll pick which view you like best. And the great thing about it is once you pick a view, the Blackboard will remember the last view that you used, so you don't have to keep resetting it every time you go in. So if you are grading students on the view here, next time you come into the class, it will default back to this view for you. So it tries to remember what your favorite view is for you. So this works just really similar to what you saw in original. So it has all the students' names, gives you their overall grade, gives you all of their assignments across the top. You can, filter them, you can sort them. A new feature that we have in Blackboard Ultra is this feature called automatic zeros. This can scare the living daylights out of faculty and students, and sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a bad way. Depends on how you want to use it. If you don't prepare your students for it, it can be a shock to them. So the way this works is that if you go into the gradebook and you turn this feature on, once an assignment has passed, the due date has passed, and a student has not submitted anything, it will automatically give them a 0 in the gradebook at that time. And the students will wake up and see, oh, my grade dropped from a 75 to a 55. What happened? And they can see, oh man, I got a 0 on this homework assignment because I didn't turn it in. Saves you time from needing to go in and type in zeros for every time there's not a submission. But it also can be a little bit of a shock to the system when the student wakes up the next morning and sees that their grade has dropped by whatever percentage points that knocks off for them. So that is a personal preference for you as an instructor. I think it's a powerful tool to get the student's attention and say, hey, you missed this. And then you always can give them an extension or give them a late assignment, an exception. But this is a great way to grab students' attention. And it can also save you some time from needing to go in and put in zeros for every non-submission that you have. So completely up to you if you want to use it or not. If you decide not to use it, if you just come into the gear wheel, you can turn that off. If you assign automatic zeros for past due work, if you don't want to do that, you can turn it off. You can turn it on at any point in time during the semester. Also, if you get in past the first couple assignments and your students are, hair on fire and calling you every time, you can turn it off, and then they ask you if you want to clear the existing automatic zeros that are there, or do you want to keep the ones you've already given. So we've added that feature if you decide to change your mind, halfway through the semester, if it just gets to be too much for you. Completely up to you. One of the other things that we probably need to talk about is setting up your overall grade. A couple ways to do that. If you are in your gradable items, if you find the overall grade here, come over to the 3 little bullet points and we'll go edit. And this will bring up all of the different ways that you as an instructor can calculate your final grade. We know instructors run the gambit on how they want to calculate the grade. Some want to use weighted categories, some want to use points, some have even these fancy things of, I'm going to have this category, but I want to drop this one assignment out of it, or I'll take a combination of these 3, but not that 4th one if this grade is higher. I've seen all kinds. I had a math instructor that tried to explain their grading scale to me one time, and I gave up. I just couldn't understand it. But so the easiest way to do it is obviously by points. If you do it by points, you set your class to be worth 500 points, 1,000 points, 2,000 points, 2,500 points, whatever you want it to be. And then as the students work through the class, they add up to 755. You divide the total number of points that they got by the total number of points, and that's your percentage grade. Easy enough, easy to do. And you can do it by points if you decide to do that. You can see the assignments, everything that has an assignment category attached to it rolls up to the assignment category. You can change those. You can weight those differently, however you want to. You can edit the calculations. So if you want to do this, you can drop if you say, I want to drop the lowest test grade out of that, you can go in and tell it to automatically drop the lowest test grade, 1 test grade, or if you want to drop the highest test grade. So that's easily built into the system for the categories. Easy enough for you to do. You don't have to think about it. You also can do if you only want to use a specific item. So if you say, there's 3 tests in here and I'm only going to use the highest of the 3 tests, you can go ahead and choose only use the highest score out of this category. So you have complete flexibility on how you want your grades calculated and how those categories work. So with the points, you can also exclude certain assignments. So if you click on that button, it will exclude it out of the total. So you notice that was the total assignments here is 355. So if I say, I don't really want to, I changed my mind, I really don't want to count this towards the final grade, I can then mark that out, and now it's taking that total down to 300, which are just the total of what's remaining in the class. So you can edit these as you see fit. Also, let's say this group project of this that's inside the assignment category, say I really want that to be weighted by itself. I don't want it to be included in this category. I can unlink that from the category, and now it puts it up as an item by itself. And then I can change the score of that, and I can edit it. I can do whatever I want to. If I want to put it back in that category, I just click the link button, and now it's back in that category. So you can move things around. So if you've got a test category that's got 4 tests plus your final, and you want your final weighted more than all the rest of them, you can unlink that final, and it can be a line by itself. Okay. So the other view is the weighted assignments, and this is traditional. A lot of people use this, and they will say in their syllabus, your assignments are worth 30% of your grade, tests are worth 45%, discussions are worth 15%, and then that will get you down to your 100% of your class. So this will automatically do all the math, all the adding of the numbers, and multiplying it by the percentage and adding them up at the end. This will automatically do that. Also, there's a tool built in here that will automatically weight these percentages to always be 100 so that you don't accidentally forget to weight something high enough. So if everything here is weighted at 100 now, and let's say I accidentally just put that in as a 5, you notice it changed all of the other weightings in the class to make sure that this is back at 100%. So this has some automatic kind of fail safe built into it. So you're not building your class on 95% of the grade when it should have been 100, things like that. But as you're building it, there are these lock buttons beside it and say, no, I really do want this to be 5. And then now if I change this one to 20, now we'll only change the other ones that are unlocked. So if I'm building this and I'm just locking them as I go, it will stop them from changing whatever categories I've locked in. But it will reassemble, or it'll reallocate all of the percentages if I keep changing in here. So if this goes to 30, then it will reallocate those points to be 21 and equally across the assignments. Again, I can lock that one and then keep going up the board, okay? So you can, the other option, so one of the options to this is how do you want this grades displayed to the students? Do you want it to be a running total? Do you want the students to see what their grade is out of the number of points that were available at that time? So let's say you've had your first module and you've only had 10% of your class, you've had 100 points of your class, and they got 80. Do you want them to see 80% on their overall grade at that time? Or do you want to see that grade out of the entire class that could be available, and now they have a 0.8 out of 1,000 instead of 80%? So you can have this to be a running total so they can see where they are at that point in time based on the number of points that they could have earned, or you can keep it so that it is a running total out of the 1,000 points or 100 points or 500 points that you have set up for the entire class. That's up to you. Also, you can you can determine how the little grade pill shows to the student. So if you've got, we'll show you what I'm talking about. When you go to students and you've got this grade here, how do you want that grade to show up to them? Do you want it to be in a letter grade format like this? Or do you want it to be in percentages? Do you want it to be in numbers? Things like that. You can change that to determine how you want that to be. Do you want it to be points or percentages? So if I come in and change that to percentage, when I go back to the student, now they see their overall grade in percentage view and not in letter view. So if your class has a different letter, grading schema than everybody else's, because, at Greenville Tech, we had some classes that were 7 points, some were 10, some were 5, some were whatever. You can determine how you want this grade to show up to the students. So the question was, with the pre-built categories that are there, can you add a new category? Yes, you can add a new category. So if you go into Gradebook settings and go all the way down to the bottom at grade categories, these are the pre-built ones that we have, and these are the most traditionally used ones. So you don't have to worry about building these every time you get in the class. They're just there. But if you have a special assignment, like you want something that says cooking demo, whatever. So you can add that category to it, and now that becomes available for you. And when we talk about assessments later and how to assign it to a category, that category will now be available for you to choose. So you can add your own custom categories to it. So the advanced tab, this is too advanced for me. I don't get into messing with this because I mess it up. And so for those of you who want to have these big fancy calculations where it's 1.2 times this plus 4.9 times this times this times that, I don't use this, but it is there for you to use if you want to use it. You probably need somebody smarter than me. Maybe you can talk to LaVon about how you can use this, because I don't use this advanced function because I'm not that advanced. I've been using Blackboard for years. I don't mess with it. You can, if you want to. You feel free. We have help articles and videos that have shown you how to do this. But this is for those of you who want to have some really fancy calculations. You can do it. I don't like it. I don't use it. And I don't know if I get in trouble from my boss from saying that, but I don't love this view. Use it if you want to, but use it at your own peril, is what I'm going to say. But it will validate and make sure that your calculations work correctly. It will allow you to do that. Basically, you can add a total, and then pick categories. You can do the minimum of, like if you say I want to take the minimum grade of these 3 categories, add the total of the homework and the presentation minus, so I mean, you can get in and do some really advanced, fancy calculations with your grade book. If you get too complicated, students aren't going to be able to keep up with it, and you're probably going to have more questions about what your grade is and the calculations are than you probably want to handle. So my professional advice is don't make it overly complicated, but if you choose to, that feature is there for you, and LaVon can help you set it up. She will have one-on-one counseling appointments with you to set them up, and I'll give you her cell phone number after the session to do those. So all that to say, you're 90% of the time you're going to be better off doing either the points or the weighted categories and leave, the advanced things to whoever. But if you want to, feel free, it's there. And Lucius will help you with it as well. He's an expert as well. He's going through the training class now, so he'll be certified in just a couple weeks. just messing. So yeah, so that's kind of the gradebook in a nutshell. Again, and so the other thing is manage grading schemas. And so these are, I don't know if you guys have a standardized grading scale across your school. Everybody has, is it a 5-point or 10-point scale? 10-point scale. So, so your administrator will go in, and if you A pluses or A's or A minuses, you can configure those. Or if you want to, if you're, Greenville Tech, and we had some programs had a 7-point scale and some had a 10-point scale, you can add custom ranges for your letter grades. And so this makes sure that you are presenting obviously the right letter grade to the student, but also when you go to post final grades that you make sure that you put in the right one. So that's completely up to you, completely optional. But if you have a set standard 10-point scale across the school, then you'll probably just have one category that says approved letter grades, and everybody will be on a 10-point scale. But you can add your own schemas if you want to. You can do a pass-fail on something. Maybe this is, maybe it's a practice quiz that you want to say pass or fail. You don't want to give them a certain percentage. You just want to say pass-fail. You can do that as well. So you can set up your own grading schemas, but it sounds like you have a set one here, so that may not be as important to you. We did talk about adding new categories. And so, if you want cooking demo, or if you've got our set basic ones that are here, you can use those. Also, this is the place that your course rubrics will live, and you can create them here. And we'll talk about creating rubrics in our session after lunch where we talk about assessments. We'll talk about creating rubrics there. But this is where all of your course rubrics will live. You can edit them from here. Also, you can duplicate them, and you can use them. You can export these to other classes, which we'll talk about during the course creation part of it. But if you ever want to see what kind of rubrics are in your class, you can come here and see all the rubrics that you have created. Again, you can add grade notations. So if you want to say, pass, fail, or, complete, non-complete, those kinds of things, you can add those as well. So that's about halfway through our time. What questions do you guys have about what we've talked about so far? Adding columns to the gradebook, yes. So these will be for like manually graded items, or, if you do like a presentation in class. So if you come to the grid view, like we have here, and again, you remember our trusty little friend, the purple plus button, you go to wherever you want that column to go. Click plus, you can add a gradable item, you can add a calculation, or you can add a total calculation. So if you wanted to add a gradable item, you add that, give it a name, make it visible to students or make it hidden from students, whichever, give it a due date, grade points. This is good for something like if you had the student turn in a paper and want them to do a presentation as well, but they don't need to turn in anything. You can do a column like this and just go in and grade the students on their presentation and that, and you can see a presentation and a paper grade. And so you can add that, or if you want to add like a calculation, maybe you do that, and maybe you want to report that grade as one grade, your paper and your presentation. You want to see what they got separately, but you want to see a final grade of that together. You can come in and say, give me a total of those two items. So if I say, so if I do coursework and say I gave research paper and in-class presentation, and I save that, Validate it. It's a valid expression. And now when I come back here, now I can see that it's added those two grades together. So that could be a quick way for you to, combine grades if you want to, or you can just have it as an individual column by itself. So yeah, so that's how you add a column to the grade center. Yeah, so you can't move. So here's the trick to this. You can't move a column around in this view, but if you go to the list view and you go to gradable items, you can move those around here. And so if I take that in-class presentation and I move it up, I move it up one more. When I go back into the grid view, now you'll see my in-class presentation is up. So if you want to move columns, go to the gradable items and move them there, and then it'll show up on the grid view. That's how you move those columns. So you can download the gradebook. You can download the gradebook or the history, and this will give you the history of changes. You can do it for all items. You can do it as a Excel file or a CSV file, and you can download that and it'll be an Excel sheet and you can sort that kind of way. That'd be the best way I could think of getting to that kind of information. You also can upload too. So if you download the gradebook and want to grade offline, say you're going to be away from internet for a little while and you want to be able to grade, you can download that, change the grades on it, and re-upload that CSV file, and it'll update the grades in your gradebook too. So if you want to grade offline for whatever reason, that is an option for you to do as well. Don't know if you want to do it, never done it, but it is a possibility to do. So there are 2 points that I want to point out on this question. So the question was, does what the students see depend on the instructor's timing and when they've graded things or when things like that? So the first thing I want to say is and whether it's calculated on the number of points that they had available versus not. So we did talk about in the gradebook and the managed gradebook settings that you had the option to say, do you want it to show based on the number of points that were available at the time, or do you want it based on the total number of points available in the entire class? So that's an option that the instructor can set, and that's on this overall grade where it calculate grade based on points earned out of what's available at that point or out of total points. So that's the first part of the question. The other thing I didn't point out, and I'm glad you brought this up, is the other thing, the fail-safe that I talked about earlier, is this thing we call posting grades. And so this is where the instructor gets to choose, do you want everybody's grades posted all at the same time, or do you want them to roll out as you grade them? So if you've got 50 students and you're in a midterm and you want to grade all of these papers, do you want the students to see them as you do them, or do you want to wait until the whole class is graded and maybe you want to re-weight them based on, that everybody did really poorly on this and maybe I need to give a curve of 10 points? That's up to you. So what happens when you grade an assignment? It will go into this pending category and it'll say, do you want to post these grades? So in this assignment, I've already graded 4 of these, but those students can't see their grade yet because I've not officially posted it to the gradebook. This is good for a couple options. Like I said, number one, if you want to wait to make sure the students everybody sees their grade all at the same time. Or if you want to make sure, obviously, if you grade everybody, you need to add a curve to it. You don't want them to see a grade and then come back today and see something else different. Also, this could be make sure that you can double check your work to make sure you did it right. So this adds an extra kind of step for you here. So if I've graded these, I can come in and now I can post these 4 grades, and now the students can see those grades. So now all the students that were in those 4 will be able to see their grades at the same time. So that's a choice that the instructor can make. You can also choose this to post automatically if you want to, completely up to you. But we do add this extra layer of posting grades if you choose to use it. So that would answer that question, would the students see it? And it depends. If you do it automatically, then students will see it as you grade it. If you wait and put it in this pending category, then they wouldn't see it until you actually post it. So the question is, if you have an assignment not in Blackboard, are you talking about like a McGraw-Hill or a Pearson? Or so if you're using publisher material like McGraw-Hill, Pearson, when you set up that LTI link between your class and that class, one of the options will be, do you want to sync the gradebook from McGraw-Hill to this? And it will add grading category. It will add those assignments into your gradebook for you, and we'll sync the grade back and forth. But if what you're talking about would go more into where we added this individual column. So if this is a class participation, you would just come in, add an item, and then you would call this class participation, and then you could put, the number of points, could be percentages, complete, incomplete, whatever. So you would just add a column to the grade book with a weight to it. And you can have this as a weight, as a grade here in the grade book, but it wouldn't show up on the content page. Yeah, you just click on it and edit it. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so any of these places that you have that you want to add a manual grade to it. So if I say, a Jenny came in and I want to give her a manual grade, I can just type in 75 and I hit enter, and now that's added that grade to her. So any of the added columns that you have, you just go in and type the score. You also can add exemptions directly from here. So if Jenny had an exempt grade, like we decided, hey, you missed this, but you had a good excuse, so I'm just going to exempt this from your final grade. You can do that directly from here as well, or you can add an exception to give them more time, deadline, that kind of thing. So if you go into the assignment view, we haven't gotten into grading, like actual grading items. We're going over Gradebook. So if you go into, that one's already all graded. Let's look at one that's got some to grade. Let's look at rough draft here, and let's start with Leslie. She's got a submission here. And so this is the new grading workflow. This looks a little bit different than what you had in original. You can, obviously jump from student to student to do their assignments. Their assignments will render here. This was a PDF upload that we had her do. You can give feedback directly here. And this is also where you can do a grading rubric if you want. Our overall grading feedback works just like any text box works in Blackboard. Also, we have this feature of add audio video recording. You can do this directly in Blackboard. You don't need any outside tools. You don't need Zoom. You don't need Kaltura. If you click on this, you actually can record your audio or video feedback directly to the student, and you can post it to them. It will auto caption the video or the audio content automatically. And this doesn't count towards your Blackboard storage. For those administrators in the room who are worried about going over storage, this doesn't actually count towards your storage. And I believe these videos are up to three or 4 minutes long. You can record directly to the students directly from their assignment. So if you want to do that, instead of writing out feedback, you can do that directly from here. Here's how the rubrics work. So if I've got my workflow here, also, all this is getting in my way, I can collapse that down, but I can still see the students that I need to grade. You can come in here and then use your rubric. You can use your pen to write on it. If you want to circle things, you can use your pen to do that. You also can add criterion feedback on the rubric. If you want to say, hey, great job on the originality of this, blah, blah, blah. You also can add comments directly onto. So like if you're an English instructor, do you say, where are your citations? And that's something you always say. You can save that comment and it will follow you as an instructor across all of your classes. And you can say, place this comment, and you can place it directly onto your workflow and point it to, now it's right here at question 3. And you basically save that. And now you've given them specific feedback comment. It looks like it's directly from you, but you've pre-saved it from the start with. So Gradebook grading workflow, absolutely amazing, completely different than it was in original, really powerful. Also with this, if you were doing a test, you could grade by questions. So if you want to look at all of the same essay questions across all of your tests so that you as a grader are in the same mindset while you're grading them, you can filter it by question, go grade all of question 1, go to question 2, go to question 3, and you grade them across all of your tests. Really powerful workflow. I'd love some more time at some point to show you a little more about the flexible grading, but it's absolutely fantastic. You can jump between students. You can see their submissions here. You can collapse any of this window down. So if you need, more room to see this, you want to focus just on this submission, you can see you can underline, circle, add comments to it. You can add pictures to it if you want to. Yeah, pretty powerful workflow. And I would really suggest getting in there and playing around with this. I think you'll really like it. Can you show both a letter and a percentage grade at the same time? Not at this point. You would have to choose. It's a binary, one or the other right now in the overall grade column. You could add an extra column to it and put in a letter grade or a number grade if you wanted to, but the overall calculated grade here, you would have to set that up manually to do it. It can be done, but it just takes a little bit of extra work. So if you've got Safe Assign turned on your assignments, this will actually show up in the grade book, and it says that this is low risk from being copied content from somebody. So that's our originality checker that's built that we partner with, and so that just adds that to the and you can see those turn it in reports and things. If something looks like it's been copied from another source, it will tell you that it's possibly. Yeah, so that's the originality checker. So no, plagiarism checking on AI, no, not at this point, and that was purposeful because we did test them, and several other companies have tested them, and they were throwing up a lot of false flags, especially for non-native speaking English speakers, because it would look like it was broken sentences, and those would flag as AI generated because they would say these sentences didn't make sense, grammar, whatever. So there were a lot of false flags. So I don't think any of the originality checkers at this point have gotten smart enough to detect AI without throwing up a lot of false flags that could be considered discrimination against certain classes of people. So no, as a part of our AI framework, we've decided to stay away from that now until the technology gets a little bit better. But we did check it out with Turnitin and Safe Assign, and just it didn't produce the results that we wanted at the time. So we've decided to stay away from those. I know that there are some originality checkers that say they check for AI. I would be a little weary of those, and really do your due diligence on those. But because a lot of studies have shown that they have false flagged AI generated content when it just may have been a non-native speaker or somebody that's grammar may not have been at a place that it should be. So it got into discrimination stuff that I think we just stayed away from. So my preview student hasn't gotten anything submitted, but he shows up and this is the only view they have is basically all of their assignments. And they can go directly in here. They can see when the due date was, what their status is. They can see their grade. Also, this little thing will turn, the feedback will be here, and there'll be a little indicator that said that you've got feedback from your instructor, and they'll click on that, and it will take them to the video or the text or whatever you had from them, and allow them to see that information. So yeah, so students get this view. It looks a lot like your assignments list view, and it will have all of the information that they have. They can go in and see the grade. They can see any feedback that you gave them, their overall grade. They can see, if it was graded by a rubric, they'll be able to see the rubric and how they scored on all of those, things like that. So if I come into Robin and I want to give her an exception on this one, I can either exempt the grade or I can give her an exception. If I give her an exception, I can say due date. I can change the due date for her, or I can show on or show after. I can change her number of attempts that I allow her to have, and that will only affect her. It won't affect the rest of the class. So you can change those directly from that screen. Pretty easy to adjust that for an individual student. You have to do it by student. Yeah, because exceptions are rare. Like you don't usually give the whole, because if you're going to give it to the whole class, then you just go and change the due date for the whole thing. So it's usually the smaller groups of students that you do it to. So if you want to make sure you pick the right student, so it's student by student. Okay, so let's break. I think lunch is on its way, I believe. And so we will start these sessions back at 1 o'clock, right? And we'll talk about creating classes, copying content, and those kinds of things in that session at 1 o'clock.